The rain fell softly outside the old wooden doors of the Haven's Rest Hotel. Jack Sullivan stepped inside, shaking off the droplets from his coat. He had been driving all day, lost in thought, his mind a storm of worry. He needed a break, a place to gather himself and let the world drift away for just a little while. As he walked to the front desk, Jack noticed the sense of history that surrounded him. The walls were lined with faded photographs of guests long gone. A fragile bell sat on the counter, its sound echoing with a charm lost in the digital age. An elderly woman sat in a corner, knitting quietly, her needles clicking softly like a metronome in a quiet room. "Good evening," said the young woman behind the desk, looking up from her computer. She offered a warm smile. "Welcome to Haven's Rest. Just checking in for one night," Jack replied, feeling the weight of his own voice. The girl typed his name into the computer. There was a distraction in her eyes, a flicker of confusion. She looked up again, her brows knitting together slightly. "It seems strange." Jack tilted his head, unsure where the conversation was leading. "I didn't make a reservation, that's the thing," she said slowly, glancing back at the screen. "It says here that you checked in earlier today." Jack felt a jolt run through him. The girl hesitated, looking increasingly puzzled. "I'm not sure how to explain this." She turned the screen toward him, revealing documents with his name emblazoned on them. Panic washed over Jack. He stared at the computer, then back at her, disbelief clogging his throat like a sudden storm. "I can't buy a hotel." "Of course," she said gently, "but it looks like you or someone with your name has completed the purchase today, signed all the papers." He felt his heart race. Sweat trickled down his back. Had someone been playing a joke? Was he being pranked? He looked around, half expecting hidden cameras to pop out from the shadows. "This can't be right." She nodded but was firm. "I understand." Jack gulped. "Can I see the papers?" She glanced around as if searching for support, but eventually stepped away from the desk and led him to a small office tucked behind the lobby. Inside was a stack of papers, official-looking and filled with loops of legal jargon. "Here," she said, handing them to him. "Just read through." Jack paged through documents filled with numbers and addresses, contracts and signatures. There was his name right at the top. It was real. He swallowed hard, feeling the walls of reality begin to close in on him. In disbelief, he sank into a chair, wrestling with the weight of his life. Just that morning, he had been struggling with bills, starved for hope. The thought of owning a hotel was beyond his wildest dreams. It felt like he was living someone else's story, a character on a page he'd never read. A young woman's voice broke through his thoughts. He said, needing something solid to cling to in this whirlwind. "Laura," she replied, concern etched on her face. "Laura, I don't know how this happened. I'm just a regular person." She hesitated, weighing her words, but maybe this could be a chance. You could start fresh. Jack shook his head vigorously. "I have no idea how to manage a hotel." He buried his face in his hands. Silence filled the small room, the weight of uncertainty making it hard to breathe. The sound of the rain pattered against the window, a calming reminder of the world outside, a world that had felt so distant for so long. Laura entered the moment with a rhythmic cadence, her voice soft. "I know it's a lot, but think about it, Jack. This hotel has a history. It holds stories, memories." He looked up at her, searching for understanding. "But what if I mess it all up? What if I ruin it?" Her steady gaze calmed his racing thoughts. "Life is about taking risks. You're already here. What if this is your chance to change everything?" He considered her words, memories of his own life flashing before him, roads not taken, chances missed. What if this was a new beginning? Could a man like him really turn a place like this around? Breathless, he forced a smile. Laura beamed. "Well, first things first, you should explore the hotel, get to know it. Just take a moment and remind yourself of what's here." The notion felt strangely empowering, running through his veins like electricity. He pushed himself up from the chair and walked out into the lobby. As he wandered the halls, Jack felt the weight of time and history in each creak of the floorboards beneath him. Faded floral wallpaper whispered stories of laughter and love, of guests who'd walked these halls before him. A sense of belonging began to unfurl in his chest. He asked Laura as she had followed him down the corridor. They slipped into the small lounge, a cozy nook with well-worn couches and books lining the shelves. Jack sank into one of the couches while Laura settled down beside him. "This place has character," he said, looking around. "I can see it." "Exactly," she replied. "You just need to nurture it, get to know it like you would any person, talk to the guests, learn their stories." He could envision it, the lobby bustling with laughter, the sense of coffee and fresh pastries wafting through the air, families gathering for game nights, couples finding romance in the quiet corners. He asked, realization dawning, "What if this is a train wreck waiting to happen?" "Start small," Laura urged. "Meet them, they can guide you." Jack felt the flush of hope beginning to bloom again, smoothing over the frayed edges of his uncertainty. "All right, I'm going to give this a shot." Just then the door swung open and a group of guests walked in, shaking off their umbrellas. Laughter filled the space, a warm counterpoint to the rain outside. Jack felt an urge to greet them, to welcome them to his hotel. It was a wild thought, but it felt right. He stood, adrenaline coursing through him. "Hi there, welcome to Haven's Rest." The guests turned, surprised but pleasantly caught off guard. They responded with enthusiastic smiles, engaging in small talk as Jack felt himself spilling into the role, surprising himself with ease. Laura grinned, her eyes sparkling with approval. Days turned into weeks and Jack embraced his life as a hotel owner. He invested time in the small details. He painted the walls, breathed new life into the old furniture, and collaborated with Laura to develop events that transformed Haven's Rest into a welcoming community hub. Every time a guest entered through those heavy wooden doors, Jack saw their faces light up. He could sense their stories, their hopes, their dreams intertwining with the spirit of the hotel. He found joy in crafting experiences, providing comfort, and even creating small miracles, turning what was once a random visit into a cherished getaway. But it wasn't all easy. Late-night dilemmas and hiccups arose, leaky roofs, delivery mishaps, and technology that often felt more trouble than it was worth. In those moments, he felt doubt creep in. What have I done? Yet, as he walked through the bustling lobby filled with laughter and conversation, he was reminded of his journey, of the leap he took into the unknown. Each challenge became a lesson, each setback a stepping stone. With every sunrise that painted the sky above Haven's Rest, he felt the weight of his life shift. He wasn't just a regular guy anymore. He was a creator of stories, a guardian of memories, and a part of something far greater than himself. 3 months later, Jack stood at the counter where it had all begun. It had been a whirlwind of heart, sweat, and dreams as chaos turned into order. People were mingling, sharing laughter. The air buzzed with excitement. When the elderly woman who had knitted quietly in the corner approached him, Jack smiled warmly. "It's great to see you again." She met his gaze, her eyes sparkling with pride. "You've turned this place into a home for so many of us." Jack's heart swelled. In the cacophony of voices, he was no longer just Jack Sullivan, a man adrift in uncertainty. He was Jack an anchor, and in the quiet, he knew the hotel had bought him too, a home for his restless spirit as much as he had become the caretaker of its very essence. And so, beneath the roof of Haven's Rest, he finally felt it, a sense of belonging, of purpose, and a glimmer of hope. All it took was a leap and a quiet check-in that led to a remarkable journey he would never forget. The rain pounded against the window, each droplet a tiny drumbeat matching the frantic rhythm of Jack Sullivan's heart. He dragged his suitcase through the heavy door of Haven's Rest Hotel, its wooden frame creaking as if echoing his weariness. The smell of old wood and polished floors greeted him, a hint of nostalgia lingering in the air. Said a cheerful voice. Jack looked up to see a young woman behind the counter, her smile brightening the dim lobby. "Evening," he replied, his voice barely audible over the sound of thunder rumbling outside. She asked, already typing on the computer. "Yeah, just for a night," he muttered, still shaken from the long drive. She looked at him, her brow furrowing. Jack caught glimpses of the hotel's worn charm, the vintage chandelier hanging from the ceiling, the faded photographs of smiling guests adorning the walls. He was grateful to find a place to rest, just a night, that was all he needed. "All right, Jack," the girl said, looking intently at the screen. This might sound strange, but..." Jack blinked, confusion washing over him. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, tapping the keyboard nervously. "It says here that you checked in this morning." Jack's heart did a flip, and he felt the weight of disbelief hit him like a cold wave. "Here, let me show you," she said, turning the screen toward him. The screen flickered with documents, lines filled with numbers and legal jargon swirling into an incomprehensible blur. He felt lost in a sea of confusion. This wasn't something anyone just casually did. He needed a room, not a whole hotel. Jack laughed nervously, searching her face for a sign of a joke. The girl didn't smile. "I assure you it's not a prank." His mind raced as she led him to a small room filled with outdated furniture and stacks of papers. The smell of ink and dust filled the air. Jack reluctantly took the seat she offered, his palms sweaty on the table. She set down a thick folder, pages spilling out. "Just read through it. You really did buy the hotel this morning." He flipped through the pages, his heart sinking deeper with every word. There was his signature squiggly and hasty scrawled on documents detailing the acquisition. The name of the hotel loomed over him like a heavy cloud. Every line seemed to mock his confusion. A part of him wanted to laugh at the absurdity, but the gravity of the situation left him breathless. Laura's voice cut through his daze, her gentle tone urging him back to reality. "I don't even know where to begin," he whispered, feeling like he was falling through a rabbit hole, jumbled letters swirling around him. Laura sat patiently, her eyes steady as she reminded him, "Sometimes life throws us curveballs, it's up to us to catch them." Jack echoed, his voice trembling. Laura leaned in, her eyes glinting with earnestness. "You could turn this place around. Haven's Rest has character, history." Jack sighed, running a hand through his hair, the weight of doubt pressing down hard. Just a few hours before, he had been seeking solace, escaping the constant grind of bills and responsibilities. He had envisioned a simple night away, yet here he was, potentially burdened with something enormous. "Let's start small," Laura proposed, her voice soothing. "Get to know the hotel, meet the staff, the guests." His heart raced, a tempest swirling within him. The idea felt strange, yet exhilarating. Jack stood up, a flicker of determination igniting. "All right, I'll give it a shot." Laura smiled, relief washing over her features. "Let's take a tour." As they walked through the hotel, Jack felt an odd sense of connection with the space. The faded carpets told stories from decades past, the walls seemed to hum with laughter and tears. Each room held a fragment of someone's journey, a memory tucked safely between the sheets. In the lounge, he found a group of guests gathered, laughter bubbling up around the small fireplace. Jack hesitated, anxiety creeping in. He had never been good at socializing, but something pulled him forward. The warmth of their smiles wrapped around him like a comforting blanket. He announced, his voice ringing out with surprising clarity, "I'm Jack." The chatter stilled for an instant before a wave of friendly greetings washed over him. One man in a bright red sweater raised his glass. "Cheers, Jack." Jack's heart squeezed tightly before releasing, a smile breaking through. He called back. Just that moment felt electric, a rush of connection binding them together in that cozy space. But as he stepped back into the office later that night, the weight of uncertainty settled in once more. Managing a hotel, could he really do it? Days turned into weeks, each morning blending into the next, and the weight of ownership began to settle on his shoulders. Jack immersed himself in his newfound role. He collaborated with the team, each member bringing unique strengths. There was Carla, the cook with a heart of gold who could turn simple ingredients into mouth-watering dishes. Mark, the handyman, always ready with a solution to the unexpected dilemmas that life threw their way. And Laura blossoming into his right hand, offering her insights and laughter. Every interaction felt like a puzzle piece fitting snugly into a larger picture. He learned faces, names, and stories, unearthing bonds with guests who returned week after week. The hotel began to feel like home, and slowly Jack's confidence began to grow, but not every day was easy. Unforeseen storms hit, quite literally and metaphorically. One evening, a sudden storm caused a power outage. Guests were uneasy as they gathered in the dining area, shadows dancing over their anxious faces. Jack stepped forward, heart racing. "I know this isn't ideal, but let's make the best of it." His words were met with surprised looks and rising murmurs. He quickly organized tables, lit candles, and gathered everyone around. Laughter began to break through the tension, and as they shared stories and made light of their plight, Jack realized he had stumbled onto something beautiful amidst the chaos. But after the storm passed, doubt swept back in like a low tide, revealing rocks he hadn't seen before. He feared they would leave once the novelty faded, that becoming a sustainable establishment was out of reach. One evening, as he was cleaning the lobby, Laura approached him. "You've brought life back to Haven's Rest, look around," he replied, wrestling with his thoughts. "Doubt is natural, everyone feels it, but think about why you started. You found a refuge here just like everyone else." Jack took a moment. Could a simple night away turn into a sanctuary? He thought about moments shared with guests, connections forged over laughter and shared stories. In that instant, something shifted inside him. A flicker of fire ignited, reminding him of why he'd taken this leap. In his chest, he felt something solid, pushing away the clouds of uncertainty. Days turned into months, and with Laura's encouragement guiding him, Jack found new ways to breathe energy into Haven's Rest. He introduced themed weekends, dance parties, and even cooking classes led by Carla. Slowly, the hotel began to flourish, a warm heart beating alive with excitement and joy. Guests came for more than just a stay, they came to experience life. One warm summer evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Jack stood outside the hotel watching people mingle. Families sharing ice cream, friends laughing under string lights, couples dancing under the glow of the stars. Feeling overwhelmed with gratitude, he turned to Laura beside him. "It's all because of you, Jack." Tears pricked at the corners of his eyes. He turned back to the gathering, feeling a mix of wonder and pride. He had turned a random check-in into a new life, a chance he never thought he could handle. And now the hotel was a tapestry, woven from laughter, tears, and memories, a sanctuary not just for others, but for himself as well. With a steady heartbeat and newfound clarity, Jack knew that every challenge had shaped him, crafting an unexpected journey of self-discovery. He was no longer just a traveler seeking refuge. He had become the heart of Haven's Rest, a beacon for all searching for a little warmth and connection. And as waves of laughter drifted around him, a sense of belonging filled his heart. He finally discovered where he was always meant to be. The heavy wooden doors swung open, and Jack Sullivan stepped inside the Haven's Rest Hotel, shaking off the raindrops that clung to his coat. Thunder rumbled in the distance, a low growl that echoed his own unease as he approached the front desk. With a sigh, he finally allowed himself to breathe in the familiar scent of old wood, mixed with a hint of coffee from the adjoining cafe. Chirped the young woman behind the counter, her smile bright against the fading daylight. "Evening," Jack replied, his voice distant as if he was already lost in another world. "Yeah, just one night," he said, forcing himself to focus. He needed a break from the chaos of his life-work stress, financial pressure, and the recent heartache from a breakup. This trip was supposed to be a small escape. The girl's fingers danced over the keyboard, but then she paused, her expression shifting from friendly to confused. This is strange," she murmured, glancing back at the computer. "It seems like you have a reservation here, but..." Jack's brow furrowed at her tone. Well, she hesitated, then leaned in slightly. It says that you checked in this morning. Jack's heart dropped. What? She nodded, her sincerity washing over him like a cold wave. I know it sounds crazy, but all the paperwork is right here, she said, waving a folder in front of him. His mind raced. Panic tightened his chest like a vice. He felt like he was in a bizarre dream one he couldn't wake up from. I didn't buy a hotel, he whispered. Here, take a look, she urged, leading him to a small office in the back. The air was thick with the scent of old paper and something else, deception, perhaps. She placed the folder on the desk and opened it, exposing the pages filled with his name and legal jargon that felt impossibly foreign. Jack scanned the documents, squinting at his signature scrawled at the bottom. He felt a mix of disbelief and confusion. Every sentence seemed like a riddle, whispering secrets he didn't understand. There has to be a mistake, he managed, feeling his world tilt on its axis. Trust me, I wish there was, she said gently, her sincerity shining through the chaotic fog clouding his mind. His heart raced as he combated a rising tide of panic. I don't even know how to run a hotel. Maybe you weren't thinking. Sometimes people make choices driven by emotions. A change. I didn't even realize I wanted a hotel, he murmured, the weight of her words anchoring him. Why not take a moment to explore the place? Jack nodded slightly, still fighting to process the overwhelming reality. As they stepped back into the lively lobby, Jack felt the pulse of the hotel guests mingling, laughter echoing, and the smell of freshly brewed coffee wafting through the air. He caught a glimpse of a young couple at the cafe, their eyes bright with excitement, and an elderly man intently reading by the fire. Each detail felt like a piece of a larger narrative, a story he hadn't yet discovered. Go on, Laura encouraged. Ask questions, he replied, anxiety creeping in. Then they think you're crazy. With a deep breath, Jack straightened his coat and took that step forward. Hi there, I'm Jack. The words spilled out, surprising even him with their confidence. The guests looked up, curiosity dancing in their eyes. A woman in her 50s asked, her grin warm as sunlight filtering through trees. I guess so, he said, still processing the reality of the situation. Good to know, Jack felt a rush of warmth. Laura, leaning against the counter with a satisfied smile, whispered, see. But as the evening settled, doubt began to creep in again. He found himself back in the small office, staring at paperwork that felt like an anchor pulling him deeper into unknown waters. He swiveled in the chair, ruminating over how he even ended up in this predicament. Jack had always been an average guy, quiet, a bit of an introvert, living a life of routine. Wake up, go to work, come home. This reckless leap felt jarring. Was it even possible to run a hotel? Could he truly transform it into something meaningful? Then, as if the universe was listening, a knock on the door pulled him from his spiraling thoughts. Laura entered, her demeanor light but purposeful. I wanted to check in. I don't even know how to begin envisioning a plan. Her eyes softened. That's normal, but don't you see? You have an opportunity here. You could create a space for people to feel a sense of belonging. Jack replied, the weight of fear still heavy on his heart. You won't know until you try. Jack glanced back at the office. Okay, help me see the potential. Laura's smile grew wide. Let's meet the staff first. With renewed determination, Jack followed her through winding hallways adorned with photographs, black and white memories of past guests, moments frozen in time. As they approached the kitchen, the rich aroma of spices danced around him. Inside, a middle-aged woman was chopping vegetables with a precision that took Jack by surprise. She turned at their entrance, her hair pulled into a neat bun. She exclaimed, wiping her hands on a towel, I'm Carla, the chef here. Thank you, Carla. Whatever the guests desire, I aim to make them feel at home. Jack felt a surge of inspiration. Yes, that's so true. What if we turned dinner into an event, a community dinner? Carla's eyes sparkled. I love that idea. Yes, Jack felt electricity dance through him. This meeting had sparked a flame of possibility. As they moved back into the lobby, Jack turned to Laura, excitement bubbling beneath the surface. They brainstormed ideas, laughter spilling out as they built on one another's thoughts. Planning activities became a mix of creativity and fun. A trivia night, a local history tour, even movie marathons on cold weekends. The next few weeks unfolded like petals blooming. They hosted community dinners where laughter filled the air, guests swapping tales around a shared table. Families returned often, sharing their joy, their celebrations, and even their struggles. Each event brought everyone closer, nurturing a sense of togetherness that thrived within those walls, but with joy came trials. One rainy night, the power went out, plunging the hotel into darkness. Jack felt his heart race as panic swept through guests. He needed to act. Everyone, he called out, his voice steady. Let's make this an adventure. As guests rallied together, Jack felt a rush of adrenaline course through him. They played card games by candlelight, telling ghost stories that sent shivers through the air. Laughter roared as they embraced the unexpected together, and Jack realized this was more than just a hotel, it was a community. But doubts continued to flare, hanging in the corners of his mind. Would their momentum last? What if guests stopped coming? The fear of failure gnawed at him, ever persistent, like a shadow he couldn't shake. Late one night after a long day, he saw Laura working on some marketing materials. She asked, her voice gentle but probing, I just wonder how long this can last. Change is difficult for everyone. he replied, frustration creeping into his voice. You're already doing it, Jack. Look at how many people find joy here now. She had a point. Jack thought of the connections forged during those community dinners, the laughter that filled the rooms, and the thousands of moments that had come to life in just a few months. The next day, inspired by Laura's words, he sat in the lobby with a notepad. He sketched a vision for the future, an annual festival celebrating the town's history, workshops featuring local artisans, collaborative nights with live music, and even opportunities for budding chefs to shine. Months passed, and Haven's Rest blossomed into a hub of warmth and laughter. Jack stood at the front desk one afternoon, watching new guests arrive, their expressions a mix of curiosity and excitement. He felt a sense of pride swell within him. A familiar voice reached him. He turned to see Mike, the family man who had visited multiple times, his children darting around happily. Hey Mike, great to see you again. Doing great. We heard about the festival coming up and couldn't resist coming back. Jack's heart fluttered at the sentiment. That's exactly what I wanted. We love it, Mike said with a broad smile. As the days grew warmer, anticipation built for the festival. Jack spent countless nights planning, gathering the community, and working tirelessly to ensure every detail was perfect. Then came the day of the festival, the sun shining brightly as vendors set up booths outside, filling the grounds with color and life. The street buzzed with laughter, music, and the aroma of delicious food. Families roamed, children ran, and Jack relished in the joy that filled the air. Turning to Laura, who stood beside him, Jack felt a surge of gratitude. We did it, he whispered, his voice teeming with emotion. Actually, you did it, she replied, her smile radiant. By the end of the day, as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Jack gazed upon the smiling faces gathered around a communal fire, roasted marshmallows held high, laughter dancing in the air. He marveled at how far he had come since that stormy evening when doubts hadn't just seeped into his mind, but threatened to drown him entirely. As he reflected on the twists and turns, Jack felt a burgeoning sense of acceptance. The hotel had become more than bricks and mortar. It had welcomed weary souls, built bridges among strangers, and transformed not only into a business, but into a sanctuary for those in search of belonging. In that moment, Jack knew he was exactly where he was meant to be. This journey had started with a mere check-in, but it had evolved into something so richly profound that he couldn't help but feel elated. He smiled, believing that even if the future held uncertainty, he had gathered a family, and together they could weather any storm. He realized now that taking risks sometimes leads to the most beautiful of stories, and Jack, with every heartbeat, was living one. The rain drummed steadily on the pavement as Jack Sullivan pulled into the gravel parking lot of Haven's Rest Hotel. The building stood solemnly in the dim light, its weathered facade speaking of years gone by and stories untold. He stepped out of his car, feeling the dampness seep into his shoes, the weight of a long week hanging heavily on his shoulders. As he pushed open the heavy wooden door, a bell chimed softly, welcoming him into the lobby. The cozy warmth enveloped him like a long-lost embrace. Jack inhaled, taking in the rich aroma of coffee and pastries wafting from the small cafe in the corner. He felt a pang of hope. Maybe this place could offer him the escape he so desperately needed. Chirped a young woman behind the front desk, her smile brightening an otherwise dreary night. Evening, he replied, attempting a smile of his own, though anxiety tugged at him like an annoying itch. Yeah, just one night, Jack said, pulling out his wallet. The weight of bills and responsibilities felt like chains around his ankles. The woman's expression changed as she typed his name into the computer. She murmured, her brow furrowing with confusion. It looks like you have a reservation, but that's not the weird part. You checked in earlier. Jack's stomach dropped and the lobby spun around him. Her eyes searched his for understanding. I know it sounds unbelievable, but it's all in the system. His heart raced. This has to be a mistake. Please just take a look at the paperwork, she urged, gesturing for him to follow her to a small office tucked away at the back. Jack could feel cold sweat trickling down his spine as he followed her, his mind racing. He had just wanted to find a place to rest. As the door closed behind them, the room seemed to close in on him. The woman handed him a thick folder filled with documents that looked foreign and intimidating. Jack flipped through the pages, each one containing legal jargon that made his head spin. There it was, his signature, hastily scrawled in a moment of impulse. He murmured, feeling panic bubble up. You might be surprised, she said gently. It's an opportunity, Jack. Jack sank into a chair, glancing out the window at the downpour. I needed an escape, not a commitment like this. I'm just some guy, Laura, the woman behind the desk, interrupted. Maybe you needed to dive deep into something new. Look, Haven's Rest has potential. His mind raced. Could this hotel be something extraordinary? Could he really turn it into a sanctuary, not just for himself, but for others? The seed of doubt crept in once more. What if I fail? Failure will teach you, she said. Why not take a moment to explore, meet the others? Sighing, Jack rose from the chair. As he walked into the lobby, he was greeted by the sounds of laughter mingling with the smell of baked goods. Families gathered around a table playing cards, while a couple in the corner shared quiet smiles over steaming cups of coffee. Surprisingly, the atmosphere felt alive and inviting. Go ahead, Laura encouraged, crossing her arms, her eyes sparkling. Talk to them. Hesitant, Jack approached the card table where a group of teenagers were laughing heartily. Hey guys, I'm Jack. Thanks, man. We're just about to start a tournament, one of the boys smiled. His anxiety slowly dissipated as he felt a warmth from their enthusiasm. From laughter to storytelling, the evening unfolded, and Jack found himself connecting with the guests, each interaction grounding him deeper into this unexpected reality. He shared his own stories while they readily filled him in on their adventures and dreams. You really should consider starting events here, one of the girls suggested. Jack paused, his mind cycling through the possibilities. As he spent more time in the hotel, he realized that there was an openness to the charm of Haven's Rest. Laughter and connection lingered in the air, bouncing off the walls like colorful paint on a canvas waiting to be filled. Days turned into weeks, and Jack gradually immersed himself in the routine of running the hotel, assisted often by Laura, who turned out to be more than just a desk clerk. She became a confidant, a partner. They brainstormed ideas together, dreaming of themed weekends and community dinners, each plan sparking a flicker of excitement within him. But reality had a way of crashing in. Challenges arose, each one testing his resolve. One night after a storm, as he sat in the lobby with Laura, his phone buzzed angrily. Staff isn't showing up for sunrise breakfast, he read aloud, frustration boiling over. Let's not panic, Laura said calmly, her eyes focused on him. As Jack dialed the number, his heart sank further. Each interaction felt like trying to hold sand in his hands that slipped away too easily. After a frustrating hour, he hung up, running his hands through his hair. I can't keep doing this. Everyone makes mistakes, you learn as you go, she said. The breakfast rush isn't the end of the world, just adapt. With her encouragement resonating in his mind, he reminded himself that hurdles could be stepping stones. He began diving deeper, searching strategies for hotels, optimizing menus, and enhancing experiences. The hotel began to transform, filled with buzz and charm, each success growing his confidence a little more. But then the unexpected hit again. One sunny afternoon, just as Jack was setting up for the weekend's festivities, he overheard a guest complaining. The plumbing's a mess, a man shouted across the lobby. Jack felt his stomach churn. The last thing he wanted was for guests to leave with disappointment. He approached the man, forcing a calmness he didn't quite feel. I'm so sorry to hear that. We'll get it fixed right away. As he worked with Mark, the handyman, to resolve the issue, self-doubt crept in once more. Would people believe in him? Could he really manage every aspect of this place? Or would this endeavor slip from his fingers, much like his previous relationships? Laura noticed his struggle and comforted him over coffee later that night. Jack, it's all part of running a hotel. Ups and downs will happen, but you're building relationships with these guests. He sighed, feeling the weight lift as he processed her words. The hotel wasn't just about plumbing and food, it was about community. It was about creating connections based on trust, warmth, and shared spaces. Weeks passed, and Haven's Rest celebrated its first festival, a culmination of countless hours of planning and collaborating. Jack stood in front of a crowd filled with laughter, food stalls, and music, the energy humming in the air as guests embraced the celebration. A family walked past him, their smiles lighting up the space. Jack caught their delighted eyes and waved. He called out, a wave of pride washing over him. The festival buzzed alive with laughter, families playing games, while others danced under string lights that illuminated the night sky. Jack felt a sense of gratitude overflowing within him, uncorking the bottle of joy he had buried deep. But familiar doubts surfaced as he glanced around. What if regret lay at the end of this journey? Was there still a chance of failure looming in the shadows? The thought nagged at him, a whisper in the back of his mind that refused to fade. Laura's voice was gentle but firm as she came to stand by his side. I'm just worried, what if this all crumbles? Jack ran a hand over his face, feeling the anxiety tightening his chest. She placed a hand on his arm. None of this is just luck. You've invested your heart. You've created a home for others. Jack took a deep breath, focusing on the faces surrounding him. Families sharing laughter, couples holding hands, friends reminiscing over old stories. The connections were palpable. At that moment, he understood. As long as he held onto those bonds, he wasn't alone. The festival continued, vibrant and full of life. Jack stepped back, observing from a distance, and in that moment he noticed something remarkable. This wasn't just a hotel, it had become a refuge. Over the following weeks, that realization began to transform into something deeper. Jack shifted from managing to truly leading. Inspired by the evolving community, he launched initiatives to support local artists and healers, bridging a sense of authenticity to Haven's Rest. What started as a curious check-in morphed into a commitment to building a legacy. Jack began to appreciate that each triumph, each setback, and every celebration brought him closer to understanding what really mattered. He connected with his guests, became part of their stories, a character who helped shape the narrative of their lives. And amid the flurry of activity, he stood there each day, welcoming newcomers, embodying the very essence of Haven's Rest. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of orange and violet, Jack felt the weight of uncertainty disappear, replaced by the warmth of fulfillment. When the next festival came around, Jack stood in front of the crowd, taking a breath as he addressed them. "Thank you for being part of this journey. You have all turned this place into something extraordinary." The clapping resounded, cheers rising from the crowd. Jack felt a swell of pride, enveloped in the warmth of connection, the kind he had yearned for, a cornerstone of true community. Together, they weren't just guests, they were a family creating memories that would linger long after the lights faded and the music quieted. In that moment, Jack realized the true power of a simple check-in. What had once been a stormy journey through uncertainty had transformed into a beautiful tapestry of human connection, woven together through shared stories and united hearts. At that moment, he knew he had not only become the owner of Haven's Rest, but had also embraced the very essence of what it meant to belong. And as he watched families create memories under the starry sky, everything felt right. He had found his place, and this time he would never let it go. The rain hammered against the windshield as Jack Sullivan drove along the winding road, the dim light of his headlights barely piercing through the storm. He hadn't planned on stopping, he just wanted to get some distance from his life, the endless cycle of work, bills, and a breakup that had left him reeling. But something about the Haven's Rest Hotel caught his eye as he passed by, a flickering neon sign glowing like a beacon in the storm. With a gut feeling urging him to pull over, he turned into the gravel lot, tires crunching against the wet stones. As Jack stepped out of the car, the rain soaked through his jacket, chilling him to the bone. He hurried to the entrance, pushing the heavy wooden door open and stepping into the warmth of the lobby. The smell of coffee and something sweet wafted through the air, wrapping around him in a welcoming embrace. Chirped a young woman behind the front desk, her bright smile cutting through his lingering distress. "Evening," Jack replied, feeling the tension in his shoulders begin to ease. "Yeah, just one night," he said, pulling out his credit card. As the woman typed his name into the computer, Jack glanced around the lobby. Faded photographs hung on the walls, capturing smiles frozen in time. A vintage chandelier hung overhead, casting warm light over a cozy seating area where an elderly couple shared laughs over a game of cards. She asked, breaking him from his reverie. "All right, Jack," she said, her fingers moving swiftly across the keyboard. Suddenly her expression shifted from friendly to confused. This is strange," she frowned, glancing back at the screen. "No, this says you checked in this morning." Jack stared at her, his mind racing. "What? I bought the hotel." She turned the screen toward him, showing documents with his name boldly at the top. It felt surreal, like something straight out of a movie. His heart raced. "I didn't buy a hotel." The girl's expression softened, genuine sympathy washing over her face. "I understand this is overwhelming, but it's all in the system." Jack echoed, a wave of disbelief crashing over him. "What was happening?" she suggested gently. Jack felt a knot of panic tightening in his chest as he followed her into a small office tucked behind the front desk. The air was thick with the scent of old books and lingering dust. She placed a folder in front of him, filled with various forms. Jack's fingers trembled as he flipped through the pages, each one more bewildering than the last. His signature stared back at him, stark and unmistakable, scrawled across one of the documents. He muttered, feeling disoriented. "This is real," she said carefully, measuring her words. He sank into a chair, feeling like the world had tilted beneath him. "But how? Why? I was just looking for a place to escape." "You might have made this decision impulsively, driven by a need for change," she said, her voice cool and calm. "But maybe this is an opportunity," Jack exclaimed. "Most people don't when they start," she replied, her tone steady. "You learn as you go." Jack exhaled slowly, still reeling. "Let's go explore the hotel. You might find that it inspires you," she suggested, her confidence palpable. Reluctantly, Jack stood up, his pounding heart echoing his doubts. As he walked through the worn halls, he felt the presence of the hotel's history. Old photographs lined the walls, shadowy memories of guests who had come and gone. He could almost hear whispers of their laughter and joy, all woven into the fabric of the space. They passed through the lounge, where a few people were enjoying drinks and snacks. The sound of merriment filled the air. Jack felt a flicker of hope amid his uncertainty. Maybe he could tap into this energy, she asked, gesturing at the lively atmosphere. "Yeah, I guess," Jack replied, feeling a strange pull towards the optimistic essence of it all. Strangers mingled, exchanging stories and laughter, and he could see that this place held something special. "Meet some of the guests," she encouraged, nudging him gently forward. Jack hesitated, anxiety swirling in his stomach, but he stepped closer to a group gathered around a table. "Hey, I'm Jack." His words felt clumsy as they slipped out, vulnerability coating him like a thin layer of ice. The guests turned, eyebrows raised in surprise before a warm smile spread across their faces. "Nice to meet you," a woman asked, her eyes twinkling. I've just discovered that," he admitted, still grappling with the surreal turn of events. "Awesome, we're glad to have you." "This place has a charm," another guest responded. As they shared laughs and exchanged pleasantries, Jack began to feel a connection. Maybe this was not just an anchor holding him down, perhaps it was an opportunity to rise. Days turned into weeks, and with Laura's help, he began to embrace his new role. She became his partner in brainstorming ideas, community activities, themed weekends, cooking classes. each plan sensibly pieced together, like a jigsaw puzzle forming into a picture of renewal. But with every new idea came a wave of self-doubt. One evening, overwhelmed by the sheer weight of responsibility, Jack found himself pacing in the office late at night. "What if I mess everything up?" Laura walked in, noticing his distress. "It's part of the process, Jack. You can't please everyone, but you can build something genuine. People want real connections." His heart tightened at her insight. Maybe he had been viewing the hotel too narrowly. It wasn't just a business, it could be a community. Encouraged, he dove back into the work. He reached out to local artists, offering them a space to showcase their talents. He called local farmers to provide fresh produce for the kitchen. Slowly, a sense of excitement bubbled within him as he began crafting an identity for Haven's Rest. But then came another storm, this time not one of weather, but of chaos. One afternoon, during a bustling lunch service, the power went out. Guests murmured in confusion, some of them clearly frustrated. Jack felt the familiar panic rising in him, but this time he fought against it. "Everyone, don't worry," he called out, raising his voice to inspire calm. Hints of laughter began to cut through the tension as guests rallied together, finding joy in the unexpected. Jack, fueled by adrenaline, began organizing a trivia contest. In that moment, he realized he had tapped into something essential: adaptability. With every triumph came lessons, in every crisis a chance for connection. The guests didn't just enjoy the games, they shared stories, laughter, and bonds formed in the flickering candlelight. Something stirred in Jack's heart. Was this what building a community felt like? As days turned into months, Jack embraced the rhythm of the hotel, where late-night brainstorming sessions morphed into laughter-filled dinners. Introduced community art days and wellness weekends. The hotel blossomed as laughter echoed down the halls, filling the rooms with life. But doubt continued to sneak in. What if it all slipped away? Jack found himself poring over financial reports late into the night, studying bills and budgets, hoping to keep the hotel afloat. Fear crept in. What if it all collapsed? Late one evening, he turned to Laura, disheartened. "I don't want to let anyone down." She placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "It's natural to feel that way, Jack, but you have to trust the community you've built." Taking her words in, Jack felt a swell of determination rise within him. He turned from doubt to action, focusing on building relationships. He met guests, listening to their dreams and frustrations, learning from their stories. It was more than just a hotel. It was a tapestry of lives woven together through moments shared. Eventually, Haven's Rest became known not just as a place to stay, but as a sanctuary where people found love, laughter, and community. Families returned, relationships blossomed, and friendships flourished. The hotel's success transformed Jack from a lost soul into a thriving leader, but with success came greater responsibility. The rumors of the impending rise in property taxes pressed down heavily, almost suffocating him with worry. As Jack left the office one night, he found himself facing the old oak tree in the courtyard, a familiar spot that had welcomed countless guests. He leaned against the trunk, wrestling with the fears that threatened to overpower him. As the stars twinkled above, he remembered the friends he had made, the families he had helped, and the families who had found refuge under his care. A realization washed over him. The essence of Haven's Rest was built on connection, on love, and on sharing. From that moment on, Jack poured himself into action. He reached out to the community, organizing fundraisers and events to gather support. The local townsfolk rallied, offering whatever they could: donations, volunteer hours, a warm meal to share. Together, they rallied to preserve the hotel that had become a refuge for so many. The festival celebrating the community's spirit was a vibrant culmination of hope and resilience, filled with laughter, dancing, and a feast showcasing local flavors. Jack stood at the center, looking out over a sea of faces illuminated by twinkling lights, his heart swelling with pride. He called out, his voice cutting through the lively din, for finding family with one another, for fostering love, laughter, and hope. The applause that followed echoed like thunder in his chest, an anthem of unity that reminded him of his purpose. With each passing day, Haven's Rest grew stronger, not merely as a hotel, but as a community. Jack learned to cherish the bonds he had forged, understanding that sometimes unexpected changes brought people together in ways he never imagined. Months turned into years, and the storm that had pushed Jack into this life faded into a distant memory. He stood by the entrance one sunny afternoon, welcoming guests with a smile. The flickering neon sign that had once called him into the hotel now shone brightly, a beacon of hope for anyone seeking solace from the storms of life. He knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, he was ready. Jack had transformed doubt into purpose, and in the process he discovered something profound. He hadn't just checked into a hotel, he had stepped into a new way of life, rich with meaning and connection. And as he watched families and friends gather under the warmth of Haven's Rest, Jack felt at home, not just in the hotel but in his heart, a heart forever changed. The rain poured down as Jack Sullivan pulled his car into the gravel lot of Haven's Rest Hotel. He had been driving for hours, a tumult of thoughts tangled in his mind. Memories of a grueling breakup shadowed him, and the stress of everyday life had become suffocating. He needed a break, even if it was just for a night. As he stepped out into the damp air, he took a deep breath, hoping to find a little solace within the weathered walls of the hotel. The door creaked open and a soft bell chimed, welcoming him into the lobby. Jack felt the warmth wrap around him, pulling him away from the chill outside. He could smell coffee brewing, sweeter than hope mixed with the faint scent of old wood. Exclaimed a young woman behind the front desk. Her bright smile was infectious, and for a moment Jack felt a flicker of something other than sadness. Evening, he replied, trying to return her enthusiasm but failing. She asked, her fingers already dancing over the keyboard. Yeah, just for one night, he said, extracting his credit card from his pocket. As she tapped away, he glanced around the lobby. Old photographs lined the walls, capturing smiles from decades past, a tapestry of countless lives once lived here. It intrigued him how a hotel could hold so many stories. Okay, Jack, she said, her brows suddenly furrowed. This is strange, but it seems like you have a reservation. Jack blinked, confusion washing over him. She turned the screen toward him, her brows knit together. It gets even weirder. Jack felt as if he had been punched in the gut. Bought the hotel. I know how it sounds, she said, her voice calming, but it's right here in the system. His heart raced, panic threatening to envelop him. I think you need to see the paperwork, she suggested gently, leading him to a small office behind the desk. As they entered, the scent of dust hit him, mingling with the faint smell of old coffee. She handed him a thick folder brimming with documents. Jack's hands shook slightly as he flipped through the pages, each one filled with legal jargon and numbers that swirled in front of his eyes. Here, she pointed to a page. It felt surreal. He hadn't even remembered making such a decision. I can't own a hotel. The thought spiraled through his mind like a runaway train. Maybe it's not too late to figure it out. This place has potential, she replied softly. Jack sank further into his thoughts, wrestling with the weight of his impulsive choice. I just wanted to escape. Take a breath, she encouraged. Explore the hotel, meet some guests. Reluctantly, he complied. Feeling as if he were stepping into a dream he couldn't control, he stood, his heart still pounding like a drum against his ribcage. They retraced their steps through the bustling lobby. Jack was surprised by the energy that filled the space. Laughter danced around him as families gathered, stories shared over steaming mugs. For a moment, he could almost forget his turmoil back home. Go on, Laura urged, her tone inviting. Jack hesitated but felt the warmth pull him closer. I'm Jack, he introduced himself to a group gathered near the fireplace. A woman with a bright crimson scarf met his gaze. Hi, Jack, kind of, he said, glancing at Laura, who gave him an encouraging nod. The guests burst into laughter. Wow, well then, I was just looking for a room, Jack said awkwardly, unsure of where this was all heading. They shared a few stories, and with each exchange, the weight of uncertainty began to lift. Maybe there was something genuine about this place, something waiting to be discovered. Maybe he could embrace this challenge. Days rolled into weeks, and as Jack continued to navigate his new role, Laura emerged as more than just a desk clerk. She became his ally, his confidant. They brainstormed ideas for the hotel, fueled by caffeine and creativity late into the night. What if they hosted theme nights, cooking classes, community events? Each plan sparked a little fire inside him, and for the first time in a long while, Jack began to feel alive. But reality had a tendency to bring him crashing back down. One restless night, as he pored over the hotel's finances, doubt clawed at him. He muttered to himself, staring at the spreadsheets that felt like monsters. His phone buzzed, a text from Laura, want to grab dinner. He didn't respond at first, too tangled in despair. But finally, he pushed the laptop away and headed to the little cafe in the hotel. Laura was waiting with a warm smile, a beacon of comfort amidst the chaos. I thought you could use a breather, she said, sliding a steaming cup of coffee to him. Thanks, I don't know how I got here, he confessed, the words tumbling out. Her gaze softened. That's normal. New beginnings can be overwhelming. But every great journey starts with uncertainty, doesn't it? You have the ability to make this place shine. I came to escape, he laughed dryly. And now you have a chance to create something beautiful, she encouraged. So began a new chapter for Jack at Haven's Rest. He immersed himself in the details of hotel management, each small task weaving threads of confidence into the fabric of his identity. He worked with Carla, the talented chef, brainstorming special menus that showcased local flavors. We could host family-style dinners, bringing guests together, he proposed, excitement bubbling up inside him again. Carla beamed. I love that idea. With every passing day, Jack started to feel the hotel transform. A community began to form, with laughter echoing through the halls. Kids played in the courtyard while parents shared their stories over shared meals. Was this really happening? He felt so far from the heartache that had once confined him. Yet even amid the growing joy, trouble loomed at the door. One evening, he received a call from a contractor confirming that they'd discovered major plumbing issues. As Jack paced the floor, dread tightened around him. What if we have to shut down? Panic clawed at his insides, but this time, instead of shutting down, he chose to reach out. We need to bring the community together, he told Laura, grounding himself in her unwavering support. They rallied the team, the staff joining forces to tackle the obstacle head-on. The news of the plumbing repairs spread, and guests were understanding when the hotel hosted an impromptu game night instead. Laughter filled the space as Janet from room 204 taught everyone to play cards, while children crafted paper airplanes under the glow of candles. The challenge had turned into an opportunity. Jack felt invigorated watching strangers become friends, sharing connections that transformed the hotel into something far more substantial than he'd ever anticipated. But that didn't mean self-doubt disappeared entirely. There were still sleepless nights, pacing floors, and moments of overwhelming fear. He would think, drumming his fingers against the desk in the dead hours of the night. Then came the festival, an idea that had been born at a late-night coffee session with Laura. It was time to celebrate the community, the connections they had built. Families would come together and stories would be shared under the stars. Weeks of planning flew by and excitement buzzed through Haven's Rest as the festival day approached. Jack hardly slept, driven by a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. The day arrived bright and beautiful. Jack stood outside the hotel, feeling a mix of delight and disbelief as guests streamed in, their faces beaming with joy. He waved, checking in with each person, and felt the smile stretching across his face, contagious as the laughter intertwined with the gentle breeze. He called out to the gathering crowd in the courtyard, his heart racing. Cheers erupted as laughter echoed around him, and he noticed families holding hands, parading through the beautifully decorated space. The aroma of freshly cooked dishes wafted through the air, crafting an inviting warmth that was almost tangible. As the festivities continued, art stalls, games for kids, and community meals, a sense of belonging enveloped Jack. He was no longer just a guy who needed an escape. He was part of something much larger, a world filled with shared experiences. The night deepened, and as stars twinkled overhead, families gathered around the bonfire, marshmallows roasting, stories shared under the glowing embers. Jack felt a swell of pride rise within him, gratitude flooding his heart. Laura said quietly, standing next to him, "Look how far you've come. This is more than just a hotel." Jack nodded, overwhelmed by the connections they had forged together, the laughter and love woven into the very fabric of Haven's Rest. "I couldn't have done it without you," he said sincerely. Days turned to weeks, and with every sunrise, Jack learned to embrace the challenges. He turned obstacles into opportunities and transformed fear into strength. He found joy in the everyday tasks, checking in guests, organizing events, working alongside his dedicated team. His life was no longer an escape, it was a blossoming adventure. Every smile he received, every guest who returned, every memory created became a thread in the rich tapestry of his experience. Yet, as with any journey, there were still rough patches. A snowstorm threatened the hotel just as winter vacation approached, a rush of cancellations that sent his heart plummeting. He wondered, dread creeping back in, but rather than letting fear take over, Jack rallied his team once more. "We'll find a way to turn this around," he declared with renewed determination. With Laura by his side, they organized a cozy winter retreat. Hot chocolate and warm meals, fires crackling in the lobby, and board games for families gathered together, exchanging warmth that was more than physical. "Let's create that homey feeling," Jack insisted, channeling every ounce of passion into the endeavor. And as the storm raged outside, laughter began to fill the hotel, creating a sanctuary that felt bulletproof. As winter melted into spring, Haven's Rest blossomed, becoming a refuge for weary travelers and a hub for locals seeking connection. Jack had become the architect of a thriving haven. Months passed, and Jack found himself standing in the lobby, watching guests check in, kids laughing, couples exchanging knowing glances. Families spread out over the dining area, sharing stories while they savored meals crafted with love. He felt a sense of fulfillment wash over him when he had never thought possible. The doubts that had once clung so tightly had begun to fade into distant memories. This place was alive, it had become a community, a family. One evening, as he stood at the front desk checking in a couple with their baby, the woman looked up at him and smiled. "Thank you for creating this place." Her words echoed within him, a truth he had fought to understand for so long. "Thank you for being a part of it," he replied softly. Not long after, he found himself in the courtyard, leaning against the old oak tree that had watched over so many moments. It was a sanctuary now, filled with laughter and stories, imbued with a sense of history that connected each guest to one another. Jack realized he had found more than just a hotel, he had found a purpose. He felt grateful for the unexpected journey that had unfolded, for the challenges that had shaped him, and the community that had embraced him. As he reflected on the path that had led him to this moment, the stormy drive that had brought him to a flickering neon sign, a hotel he never intended to own, he understood that life often presents us with unexpected gifts. With every heartbeat, he embraced the love and connections he had fostered, the memories made. Jack Sullivan wasn't just a man who had checked into a hotel. He had checked into a life full of possibilities, joy, and above all, belonging. And in that moment, Jack smiled, knowing he had finally found his place in the world. The rain fell in relentless sheets, turning the world outside into a blurred canvas of gray. Jack Sullivan gripped the steering wheel of his old sedan, his knuckles white from tension. He had been driving for hours, drowning out thoughts of stress and heartache that clung to him like a shadow. After his recent breakup, life felt suffocating, and he longed for an escape. As he turned a sharp corner, the flickering glow of neon lights caught his eye. The Havens Rest Hotel stood at the end of the road like a refuge. Without thinking, he pulled into the gravel parking lot, tires crunching under the weight of uncertainty. He stepped out of the car and was met by a blast of cool air mixed with droplets of rain. The hotel loomed before him, its welcoming facade beckoning him to come inside. With a deep breath, he opened the heavy wooden door, the soft chime of a bell echoing in the lobby. A cheerful voice sang from behind the front desk. A young woman looked up with a bright smile, her energy striking against the dim light of the room. "Evening," Jack responded, his voice low, almost swallowed by his own thoughts. She asked, already tapping away at her keyboard. "Yeah, just for the night," he said, his fatigue creeping into his tone. "Jack Sullivan," he said, watching her closely. Her fingers paused on the keyboard. "That's interesting." Jack frowned. She glanced at the screen again and leaned closer, a concerned look crossing her face. "This is strange. It shows that you checked in earlier today." He stared at her, disbelief flooding his senses. Panic swirled in his chest like a storm. "I know it sounds bizarre," she reassured him, raising her hands in a placating gesture. "But all the information is here." Jack croaked, the words barely escaping his lips. "Let's take a look at the office in the back," she suggested, leading him through the winding corridors of the hotel. With every step, Jack felt the weight of impending doom stir within him. He had come seeking solace, not a burden. They entered the small office, the air thick with the scent of old paper. She handed him a thick folder filled with documents, his name emblazoned on the first page. "Here," she said, her voice steady. Jack flipped through the pages, each filled with words that spun in circles. There it was, his signature, thick and hurried, as if written in a moment of reckless abandon. I didn't mean to buy a hotel," he murmured, his mind racing. Laura, the receptionist, watched him closely. "It looks like the purchase was made online." He shook his head vigorously, disbelief coursing through him. "I can't manage a hotel. Maybe this is an opportunity for something new," she said softly. "Think about it. Havens Rest has character." Jack sank deeper into a nearby chair, his heart pounding. "Let's start with exploring," Laura suggested, her gaze urging him on. "Meet the staff, see the guests." With no solid plan, he reluctantly agreed. As they moved through the vibrant lobby, he began to notice the energy that filled the space. Laughter echoed and the smell of coffee wafted from a nearby cafe. He brushed past guests who exchanged greetings with sunny smiles. Laura encouraged him to engage. "Talk to them, you'll learn more about what makes this place special," she urged. Feeling inspired, Jack approached a group of guests gathered around the fireplace. "Hi there, I'm Jack, your new hotel owner." He felt a strange mix of pride and vulnerability. The guests turned, surprise flickering across their faces. Then one woman in a blue scarf broke into a smile. "Wow, I'm Linda, this is fantastic." Jack felt the thrill of that simple question, igniting a spark deep within him. I was thinking about." Cheerful chatter erupted as the guests began to share ideas and suggestions. Jack realized he could turn this situation into something positive, an opportunity he never saw coming. Days turned into weeks, and Jack dove headfirst into his new life at Havens Rest. With Laura by his side, he learned the ins and outs of hotel management. She guided him through challenges, showing him that every misstep could be a lesson. But self-doubt still held him back. One night, while crunching numbers, he found himself staring at spreadsheets that seemed determined to crush him. He whispered into the dimness of the office. Laura slipped in, her presence a calming force. "You're doing great, Jack." Everyone feels fear when they step into the unknown. Jack sighed, rubbing his temples. "I just wanted a break." "Look around," she urged, nodding toward the bustling lobby. "You've already created connections here." That realization struck a chord in him. Jack pushed himself to embrace every moment, inviting local artists to showcase their talents, creating community dinners, and planning events that would draw people in. Slowly but surely, Havens Rest transformed, evolving into a hub of life and laughter. Yet just as he began to find his footing, storm clouds loomed again. One evening, the weather took a turn, a harsh wind sweeping through the town that knocked out the power. Jack felt panic rise as he looked around the lobby, guests fidgeting in the dark. He called out, trying to project assurance. Panic rippled across the room as uncertainty swept through the guests. But instead of succumbing to fear, Jack turned it into an opportunity. He suggested, his voice rising above the murmur. The suggestion caught their attention, and slowly but surely he reignited the spark of community spirit. Jack rallied the guests, everyone gathering chairs and candles, laughter bubbling as they swapped stories. The darkness transformed into a backdrop for connection, filling the rooms with warmth that the storm outside could not touch. With every challenge they faced, Jack learned something new. He was surprised by his capacity to adapt, and each interaction fueled his confidence. As the weeks turned into months, he realized Havens Rest was blossoming into something far more than just a hotel. But even amidst the growing joy, self-doubt crept back in at times. In quiet moments, he wrestled with the uncertainty of the future. Would guests continue to return? Would he be able to sustain this newfound life? It was during one of these moments that he found himself leaning against the old oak tree in the courtyard, reflecting on the journey thus far. The rain had passed and the sun was beginning to set, bathing the hotel in a warm glow. He breathed deeply, soaking in the scene around him, children laughing, friends sharing stories, couples enjoying each other's company. Laura called, breaking him from his thoughts. She approached with excitement. "I've got an idea. What if we host a festival to celebrate the community?" Jack's mind raced. A festival. Exactly, it will bring everyone together, she said, her enthusiasm infectious. Fueled by this vision, they plunged into planning, pouring their hearts into every detail. Flyers were made, local businesses reached out, and community members rallied around the event. The energy was electric, and for the first time, Jack felt the exhilarating rush of teamwork and purpose. As the months passed, anticipation built for the festival, the day Jack hoped would symbolize the heart of Haven's Rest. The festival arrived in a blaze of light and laughter. Colorful decorations adorned the courtyard. Guests strolled through booths laden with mouth-watering food and handcrafted goods. Jack stepped back, taking it all in, a wave of pride swelling in his chest. A familiar voice called from behind. It was Linda, the woman he had first met in the lobby. "This is amazing." He grinned back at her, heart racing. "Thank you." Throughout the day, he mingled among guests, listening to their stories and laughter. The atmosphere was electric, a tapestry woven from connection and shared experiences. Jack felt a sense of joy blossom within him, an emotion he hadn't allowed himself to feel in quite some time. As night fell, laughter and music resonated through the air, and Jack looked out at the gathering friends, families, and strangers, all coming together to celebrate. It was a significant moment, one that turned his fears into a gentle breeze. With the festival winding down, Jack stood at the edge of the courtyard, watching people dance and laugh under the starlit sky. His heart was full. He had transformed from a stranger lost in heartbreak to a man who had brought a community together. Laura called out, her eyes shining with excitement. "We did it," he laughed, elation washing over him. "This is incredible, Laura." "Together we forged something beautiful," she replied, her voice sincere. As they shared a moment, Jack realized that this wasn't merely a one-time event, it was a reflection of the life he had created. The hotel was no longer a burden, it had become a sanctuary not just for him but for the entire community. Time passed and change once again filled the halls of Haven's Rest, this time with renewal. Autumn approached, the trees outside ablaze with color. Jack felt a sense of balance settle in his life, and he learned to maneuver challenges with newfound confidence. But self-doubt never fully disappeared. When winter rolled in, heavy snow blanketed the town, and he faced another wave of cancellations during the holidays. Despair threatened to crush him, but Jack chose to reach out once more. "We're not just a hotel," he reminded his team. "What if we create a winter retreat?" With everyone on board, they transformed the hotel into a winter wonderland, festooned with lights and warmth. Guests arrived, greeted with hot chocolate and a sense of belonging that felt like coming home. The retreat was a success, filling the hotel with laughter and stories once more. The connections formed during those cold months solidified the community further. Jack had become part of something greater than himself. And in those quiet moments as the snow fell outside, he found peace in simply being, a man who once needed to escape and had now stepped into a life bursting with purpose. One evening, as he sat by the fireplace, surrounded by friends, families, and laughter, he realized that he had not just checked into a hotel, but had checked into life itself, a life rich with connections, belonging, and love. As he gazed into the crackling flames, Jack felt a warmth within him that radiated outward, a light that would navigate the darkest storms. With each passing day, he knew he had built a home, and it was precisely where he was meant to be. He smiled, heart full, knowing he had embraced not only the unexpected journey, but also the beautiful chaos it brought, and for the first time in a long while, he felt whole. The rain came down hard, turning the roads into a glistening canvas of reflections. Jack Sullivan tightened his grip on the steering wheel, his car cutting through the murky night. Each drop against the windshield mirrored the storm brewing in his mind. A breakup left him shattered, lost in the routine of work and loneliness, and he was desperate for an escape. As he turned a bend, a dull glow caught his attention. The Haven's Rest Hotel loomed ahead, its vintage charm glowing in the dim light. Without thinking, he swung into the gravel parking lot, tires crunching on the wet stones. He needed a break, even if just for a night. Stepping out into the drizzling rain, Jack felt the weight of the world shift slightly. The moment he entered, the door chimed invitingly and warmth enveloped him like a comforting embrace. He inhaled deeply, taking in the scent of rich coffee and baked goods, a stark contrast to the chill outside. Chirped a young woman behind the front desk, her smile bright against the muted surroundings. "Evening," he replied, half-heartedly matching her enthusiasm. She asked, eyes sparkling. "Yeah, just for one night," Jack said, pulling out his card. She asked. As she typed, Jack glanced around. The lobby had a homey feel. It was filled with old photographs, cozy armchairs, and a faint trace of nostalgia that lingered in the air. Just what he needed right now, a place to hide. This is strange," the young woman said suddenly, her fingers paused mid-type. Really, I didn't make any, he said, his confusion growing. Her brow furrowed as she clicked away on the computer. No, it says you checked in this morning. Jack's heart dropped as disbelief flooded through him. She blinked, clearly as perplexed as he was. I know it sounds odd, but it's right here in the system. You signed all the papers. Panic surged within him. No, this can't be right. Let's go over the paperwork in my office, she suggested, her voice calm, but he caught a hint of concern. Reluctantly, Jack followed her through the dimly lit hallway, his thoughts racing. What kind of mistake had he made? As they stepped into the cramped office, the scent of aged paper hung in the air. Laura, as she introduced herself, flipped open the binder. Here, she said, handing him a stack of papers. Jack's hands trembled as he flipped through the documents. Every page was stamped with numbers, signatures, and legal clauses. Then he caught at his own name scribbled across the bottom. A feeling of dread mixed with confusion boiled in the pit of his stomach. I didn't mean to do this, he muttered, lost in the sheer impossibility of it all. Her gaze softened as she leaned against the desk. Maybe you needed a change, Jack. I can't run a hotel. His voice echoed against the walls, desperation spilling over. Laura watched him, the kindness in her eyes unwavering. Take a moment, think about what this could mean. Haven's Rest has charm. Jack sank into a nearby chair, his heart racing. I just wanted to escape. Let's go explore, she urged him again, her determination breaking through his haze of confusion. With a heavy sigh, Jack pushed himself up. As he walked through the lobby, he realized there was a certain energy that filled the hotel. Laughter rang out as guests congregated, sharing stories as if they were old friends, while the enticing aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafted through the air. Meet some guests, Laura prompted, observing his hesitation. Swallowing hard, Jack approached a small group gathered by the fireplace. Hi, I'm Jack, your new hotel owner. His voice faltered slightly. To his surprise, the group reacted positively. Wow, nice to meet you, Jack. I'm Sarah, one woman said, beaming. I didn't really have a plan, he stammered, feeling a rush of nerves. Suggested another guest, a jovial man with a hearty laugh. Right, Jack echoed, feeling the crowd's enthusiasm seep into him. The energy was infectious, and just like that, a flicker of hope ignited in his chest. Days turned into weeks, and Jack poured himself into his newfound role. He worked closely with Laura, who became his ally and a voice of reason amid the chaos. They explored ideas together, theme nights, movie screenings, cooking classes. Each night brought laughter, creativity, and a spark of community. But self-doubt often crept back in. During quiet moments, Jack would wrestle with the enormity of the commitment he had made. What if it flops? The thoughts spiraled through his mind as he mopped the lobby one night. Laura caught him in that vulnerable moment. You're building a community, Jack. It's not just about running a hotel. You don't understand, Jack replied, his voice heavy. I can't keep this going. Sometimes it takes time. You just need to be genuine. Open your heart to these people and they'll respond, she advised, her voice soothing. He absorbed her words, slowly beginning to see the bigger picture. Jack started reaching out to the guests, inviting them to share their stories, their suggestions. People wanted to be involved. They had ideas too, and it felt incredible to be a part of something greater than himself. But just as things began to stabilize, trouble struck again. One evening during a dinner rush, a guest burst into the lobby, panic in her voice. Jack felt his stomach drop as Laura darted past him, ready to handle the situation. She called out, surveying the room. Fear surged within him, yet he pushed it down, taking a deep breath. They needed to act quickly. Laura, let's do a temporary rearrangement. We can move guests around and put them in rooms away from the leak, Jack said, suddenly filled with determination. They sprang into action, coordinating with the staff. As guests graciously accepted their reassignment, the energy shifted from panic to camaraderie. Laughter began to bubble again as they shared stories, with Jack leading the charge to ease the tension. It felt good, like he was no longer just a figure behind the desk, but the heart of this community. As night fell, they gathered together in the lounge, where Jack initiated an impromptu trivia game to keep spirits high. Joyful laughter erupted, and the warmth of connection filled the space. Jack felt a smile spread across his face, realizing they were all in this together. Weeks passed, and he navigated challenges, until Haven's Rest became a vibrant hub for travelers and locals alike. The hotel transformed from mere bricks and mortar to a home full of memories friends were made. Laughter rang through the halls and stories intertwined. But just when he thought he could breathe a sigh of relief, an unexpected storm rolled in. A town hall meeting informed him of rising property taxes that threatened his dream. The announcement felt like a thunderclap crashing down around him. Jack, you need to prepare for this, Laura warned him the next morning. As he stared at the ceiling, a sense of despair washed over him. What if it all crumbles? You have to believe in what Haven's Rest can be. It's not just your fight, it's a community fight, Laura said firmly. That night, Jack found himself once more beneath the old oak tree, seeking solace in its sturdy trunk. He recalled the laughter inside the hotel, the warmth and unexpected connections made, and in that moment he decided to rise. All right, we'll organize a community event, he declared, resolute. With Laura's help, they sprung into action. Flyers flew across town, inviting everyone back for a night of celebration and togetherness. They reached out to local businesses, pooling resources together to create something amazing, something that could show the town just how important the hotel had become. When event night finally arrived, the energy buzzed in the air. Jack stood outside watching as families arrived, smiles on their faces, ready to embrace the spirit of community. Laughter filled the courtyard as old friends reunited and new ones formed. Jack called out, adrenaline pumping through his veins. Cheers erupted from the crowd, and for the first time in a long while, he felt a genuine sense of belonging, a connection to something larger than himself. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden light over the gathering, people danced, food was shared, and joy surged like waves crashing along the shore. Jack weaved through the crowd, soaking it all in. This was the community he had longed for, one that reminded him he was never truly alone. But then, just as the festivities reached a crescendo, a man approached Jack with a furrowed brow. "I have to talk to you about a serious issue," he said, his voice low, barely rising above the music. Jack asked, feeling a knot form in his stomach. "Heard rumors about the property taxes being reviewed. There's something else. There might be a buyer interested in the hotel, someone who could force you to sell," the man said, eyes glinting in the dim light. Jack's heart raced, fear coursing through him. He felt the ground shift beneath him again, the uncertainty crashing in like a tidal wave. Hadn't he fought hard enough? After everything he'd built, would it all be taken away? The music faded into the background as he stood on the precipice of realization. A single thought echoed in his mind: he could either fight back or let go. He glanced at the crowd, the laughter swirling around him like a blanket of warmth. Jack inhaled the cool night air, firming his resolve. He wasn't done yet, not by a long shot. As the festival continued behind him, a fire sparked deep within Jack. The hotel was more than just a building, it was alive, and he wouldn't let it slip away from him without a fight. "Thank you for letting me know," he said suddenly, determination flooding his voice. And with that, the night took on a new undertone, a quiet electricity crackling in the air, marking the beginning of an even greater journey ahead. Jack Sullivan was now a man on a mission, and as the echoes of laughter faded into the night, deep inside he knew this fight had only just begun.